Finally, yet another edition of the Toronto Condo Building review, where I take a particular Toronto condo building that is transacted a lot, is pretty famous, is pretty popular, and I do a full-fledged, full-length review of the Toronto condo building in question, where we take a look at the basic history of the building, some of the market trends and prices of the building, some of the pros, some of the cons, and my final assessment of the Toronto condo building. In today's edition, we're taking a look at a condo in downtown Toronto within the Toronto condo market, 197 Yonge, otherwise known as the Massey Tower. Let us begin. Well, why hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. If you're new to the channel, welcome, nice to meet you. My name is Sam, a Toronto real estate agent working with buyers and sellers across the GTA. On this channel, we like to discuss all things Toronto and GTA real estate market oriented, market stats, market trends, market facts, building reviews, buyer advice, seller advice, area analysis, and so much more. So if you're a fan of this type of content and you find it informative, feel free to follow and subscribe. And furthermore, if you have any further questions or inquiries with regards to the Toronto real estate market, you can find my contact information on the screen and in the description box. Feel free to get in touch with any questions you might have. So I put up a poll on my channel a while back asking you guys which Toronto condo building I should review next. And one of the options was you guys just leaving it to me, leaving it in my hands to determine which condo building I want to review. And I have chosen 197 Yonge, otherwise known as the Massey Tower. Let's not waste any time, let's get to it. Built upon the heritage building of the Bank of Commerce, which was formerly abandoned, but most famously in recent Toronto history was a piano store. 197 Yonge, otherwise known as the Massey Tower, resides right at Yonge and Queen. In terms of the TREP municipalities, sometimes it's considered C1, sometimes it's considered C8. It really sits and resides on the border. So if you find some listings on MLS or on realtor.ca, some of them will say C8, some of them will say C1. And that made the research for this video a little bit more complicated, but don't worry, I got the job done. It's 60 stories tall with overall about 695 to 700 units, depending on which resource you take a look at. Units in terms of studios start as small as 370 square feet. However, on the larger side, this building is quite limited. The largest units only tend to be at most around 1100 square feet, maybe 1080 square feet at most. So you're not going to get a lot of 1500, obviously 1200 square feet units. Penthouses, even in this building, are still smaller than 1100 square feet. Construction was completed finally in 2018. And the total age of the building is about 3 years old. Now, the builder MOD Developments does not have a long track record, and this is probably their biggest and most prominent project to date. They've also built 505 Richmond Street and have a building coming up on Charles Street. Now, in terms of the amenities, it's all the typical amenities. There's nothing really outside the box here. You're looking at the gym, the party room, a pool. That's really about it. And it really is the only high-rise, legitimate high-rise up to 50 plus, 40 plus stories within the immediate vicinity of Yonge and Queen. Of course, it is also next to the famous Massey Hall, which is a famous concert theater, a very reputable and prestigious theater within the city of Toronto. But nonetheless, now that we got the basic facts out of the way, and before we go through some of the pros and cons, let's take a look at some of the basic market trends in this building. Now, overall, in the entire history of this building, I was only able to track down 143 sales that occurred within the entire history of this building after the assignment phase. So I'm talking about resale condos or brand new condos. I'm not talking about before it was completed and people were trying to flip their pre-construction purchase as an assignment. And in the entirety of the history, I don't know if this really means anything, but it's an interesting fact. Average sold price of this building to this date, this is being recorded February 28th, 2023. So to this date, the average sold price across all unit types, across all unit sizes has been $737,000. This doesn't really say much, but it does kind of establish the floor. If we did a similar type of exercise with the same exact aged type of a building, for instance, with a building, let's say in North York or in Richmond Hill or or in Mimico, we would probably get different results depending on the quality, the demand of the building. So it does say something, but not much. On a per square foot basis, in the last year, calendar year, some sources I found stated that it's been selling around $1,260 per square foot, while when I did my own math, the number I came up to was around $1,240 to $1,250 per square foot. People always ask me, why don't you do more per square foot numbers? It's very extensive, and also in my experience, the per square foot, the actual square footage source is, I would probably have to say 3 times out of 10 wrong, because people just copy it based on the previous listing. The previous listing might have got a third opinion. When you go on the land registry and impact, you get the true actual measurements, but sometimes even the builder's own floor plans do not corroborate what you see on MLS or condos.ca. Now, putting the per square foot, the PSF price aside, let's take a look at the most 2 recent years we have in complete, 2021 and 2022 with regards to market trends. Once again, this is across all unit types with regards to 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and obviously studios. Well, in 2021, the average sold price of a unit based upon all the sales that occurred in the entirety of 2021 in this building was $731,000. The median was $720,000. In the entirety of 2022, we were looking at the average of $822,000 with a median of $760,000. Now, let me tell you why you should ignore the average in this instance, because the beginning stages of 2022 was a very, very hot, vibrant market, and a lot of units in this building obviously sold more than they should have reasonably sold for in a moderate market. There was a lot of overpriced solds occurring. I know this not just based on the facts, based on the fact that in the same period, I sold a lot of units in North York, in downtown, in Midtown, and really Richmond Hill even, that we sold for a high, crazy price to the point where we were worried it's not going to get appraised. Nonetheless, though, here the median is a better measure. There's no doubt about it that prices did go up in terms of the median basis in 2022 from $720,000 in 2021 to $760,000 in 2022. Now, it doesn't quite make sense to take a look at 2023 yet, because once again, we're only 2 months into 3 months now into 2023. But now let us break it down by unit type a bit more, because I really want you to have a good understanding of the particular types of units that are in this building. And keep in mind, everything on from this point is not just from the numbers, from the research, but I've shown this building a lot to multiple buyers, and I know a lot about this building. The studio units are mostly the units that end with the number 12 and 13. So the 12 and 13 units, right? So obviously the first couple of numbers is the floor, right? Whether we're looking at 1212 or we're looking at 6012, that's the floor number. That's the 60th floor, that's the 12th floor. But the ending numbers are what particularly interest us in this case, to see how many types of 1 bedrooms or studios exist in this building. So with regards to studios, as I mentioned, we have the 12 type units and we have the 13 type units. So units ending in 12 and 13. Now keep this concept in mind, right? Because now with 1 bedrooms, we have the 1 units, the 3 units, the 4s, the 6s, the 7s, the 8s, and the 11s. So once again, depending on the floor, 1 bedrooms are either going to be, let's take the 30th floor for an example, 3001, 3003, 3004, 3006, 3007, 3008, or 3011. When we make a jump to 1+1s, the 1+1 units here are same concept once again. The 5 units, the 10s, the 11s, the 13s, and 14s. So if the unit numbers ends with 10, 11, 13, 14, it's most likely a 1+1. Here, the 11 is a crossover in this building with the 1s and the 1+1s. And once again, this is not an exact science. Some of these ending digits for the units will have some crossover, but for the most part, it's pretty segmented. And lastly, for 2 bedroom units, there's 2 main types, mostly the 2s and the 09s. So mostly the 02s and the 09s. So for 2 bedrooms, there's 2 main layouts, 5002, let's say, and 3009. Hopefully that was not too confusing, but let me know in the comments if you get what I'm trying to say here. Why this is important is because builders, when they build a high-rise, units on different floors, they could be 30 floors apart, most often are the same exact unit if they end in the same exact number, right? So that's, maybe I should have mentioned that first. Once again, not exactly all the time, but a lot of the times. I have pulled up some samples here as we see of the, for instance, studios. I really want to show you the different types of studios. And I said for the most part, as we see here, we have an 1108, but for the most part, we're looking at the 12s and the 13s. So here we're starting with a 13 type unit. And the 13, as we go through the pictures of the lobby, which we will get to in my opinions, the 13 is the smaller unit type between the 13s and the 12s. Now, although the 13 is the smaller unit, it does have a better layout at face value than the other studio unit type in this building. And one thing I like about this building, which we'll get to in my thoughts, is the floor to ceiling windows, which will be even more evident with the other studio type in this building in 197 Yonge. And here you see I have a spectacular view. And then taking this unit 6012, which is a unit I actually showed to my Toronto condo buyer when we were looking at downtown Toronto condos for sale. Here we see the bigger, larger studio unit type, and the layout here is more triangular. As we go through the washroom pictures, we see a floor plan here. Floor plan is awkward, but in terms of view, it's actually a much better unit. Now, the pictures here do not do it justice. It's actually a rare case where the pictures are worse than what you're actually going to see in the unit. But here in this last picture, we see that the triangular shape is a bit awkward, but you really do get a wraparound view of the entire city. You see the water, you see the CN Tower, you see north, you see west, you see east, you see most of downtown Toronto, especially in this case, where it's the 60th floor. Now let's take a look at the 1+1s, for instance. And once again, this is just a sample. I just, picked 5 of the different types of 1+1s that are in this building that have sold. No particular theme really to it other than the types I wanted to showcase. You have, as you guys can see, the 05s, the 11s, the 01s, the 10s, and the 14s. And starting with this one, for instance, this one has a very, very awkward layout with a long corridor, which is common with the studios as well. And one thing we'll notice off the bat is this column. A lot of layouts, whether the 2 bedrooms, the 1+1s, the ones in the studios, have this column. So this is an exposed column building. Otherwise, this layout is palatable. It's definitely functional, but that hallway with the 05s is pretty bad in this building. And then for instance, this one, then you have the 4210. So the 10s, the other type of 1+1 layout in this building, as we will go through the pictures of the lobby once again. Here we see a disappointing 1+1 layout, in my opinion, once again, with regards to, yes, it does have a pretty big balcony, these 1+1 units in this building in 197 Yonge, but they do have these bedrooms in the middle of the layout where instead of the typical sliding door layouts with the bedroom in the middle of the floor plan have, these kind of have these windows. They don't even have the sliding door. And as you can see, the bedroom is somewhat in the middle, but actually closer to the entrance, I would say. And then you have the third main type of 1+1 layouts in this building with regards to the downtown Toronto condo market and 197 Yonge, Massey Tower. You have the units ending with 14. Here, these are smaller than the previous one highlighted. And you see the photography here is, obviously amateurish photography. Although it is smaller, I would say it does not have that hallway. It is a bit more functional in that sense. Yet nonetheless, the bedroom still has that, mini window, and it is still somewhat in the middle of the layout. And the +1 here is very suspect. +1. This is obviously a lower floor. But in this floor plan, I would say the +1 is somewhat suspect. I've actually seen worse, believe it or not, but it's definitely not anything to get excited about. And lastly, let's go to the 2s and the 2+1s. The largest unit types obviously in this building in 197 Yonge, Massey Tower. If I keep repeating that over and over again, apologies, but such as the Toronto condo market, downtown Toronto condo market, it's for the algorithm. I apologize. But nonetheless, what's interesting is the 05 here, there is some crossover, but this only has 1 washroom, where the other unit types, the other 2-bedroom unit types in this building have 2 washrooms, which is proper, is what you expect from a 2-bedroom. We see with this particular one, let's highlight the 02s, in this case 2202, right? And it's definitely, of all the unit types, I would probably have to say, besides the studios, which I'll get to, the best unit type in this building, I would say, is the 2 bedrooms, right? It's definitely far more functional. It's hard to make out from these pictures. Not really good pictures. Once again, the real estate agent kind of cheaped out on these pictures, I would say. But we see from the layout, much more functional, has that triangular shape type still, but nonetheless, a pretty big balcony. And it's nothing to blow your socks off, but it's better than what we've looked at thus far, with the exception of studios, and I'll get to that. Now that we've gone through some of the basic facts, the market stats, some of the type of layouts you'll find in this building, let's go towards the pros and cons with regards to this Toronto condo building review. In my opinion, what I think of the building. Now, as I always say in these videos and most of my videos, this is just my professional opinion. If you are in this building, Don't get excited, don't get sad because just one person's opinion, so keep that in mind. I think definitely this building is much more investor friendly than it is end user friendly. Basically put, I would not recommend this building for most end users. I would probably have to say most likely 90% of end users, I would not recommend this building, but it's very investor friendly. That's kind of hard to deny. So in terms of the pros, let's start there. In terms of the relative cash flow, units in this building in terms of rental yield, cash flow much better than adjacent buildings and buildings in the surrounding and for most of downtown actually. Particularly when it comes to studio units. Now that we got that first pro out of the way, let's go towards the second pro. This building actually has some of the best studio units in the entire building. The triangular shape for the one of the studio types in this building is definitely awkward, but you do get an amazing view, a balcony, and floor to ceiling windows, which is very important for studio tenants. And let's be honest, most often studios are occupied tenants, but in both cases, the studios in this building are actually one of the stronger points. Moving forward with the pros here, as I mentioned, floor to ceiling. Even the eastern units in this building actually are quite bright. As far as northern and eastern exposures can be, because of the floor to ceiling windows that is pretty common with this building, which I like. Moving on with the pros, I really am a big fan of the heritage site that it's built upon. I really think it gives it some class and much needed class. The lobby looks beautiful. It's almost as if you're in some old European hotel. I'm a huge fan of the neoclassical architecture of the lobby of the heritage site, and I think it's something sorely missed within the city of Toronto overall, and it's good that it's here. Moving forward overall with the design, a lot of people find this building ugly. I personally do not. I think it looks okay. I'm even adding the design of the high-rise in towards the pros. And lastly, one of the most obvious pros of this building is the fact it's located exceptionally well right at Yonge and Queen. I mean, this is, I would probably have to say 10 out of 10 location. Yonge and Queen is as central as you can get downtown, but without being by the Gardner. You're somewhat equidistant to the waterfront, but also to Bloor and the Annex. I mean, it's really well located right at Yonge and Queen, very close to the subway, obviously, as well. Close to Eden Center, close to the hospital, St. Michael's Hospital, that's very close by. The location is also absolutely fantastic and one of the strongest pros. Now that we have gotten some of the pros out of the way, let's focus on some of the cons here. And these are the reasons why I don't think it's an end user friendly building. And overall, as you get to kind of get the hint of this video, I am somewhat lukewarm on this building. I used to dislike this building a lot more than I do now. Keep that in mind. The building has grown on me. I used to completely say, hey, stay away from it. Now that I've visited more, it's somewhat grown on me. But let's get to the cons. As I mentioned, not end user friendly at all. You know, you have a very high tenant base, which there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but you don't want the tenant base to be the dominant base of the building. So it's not really end user friendly whatsoever, I would probably have to say. The soundproofing in terms of how much sound travels from units to the hallway and hallway to the units and in between units is actually very poor, I would have to say, from my experience. Once again, just my opinion. Not a huge fan of the 1+1 layouts and the 1-bedroom layouts as I went through. I've seen definitely worse, but some of the 1+1 layouts here are very, very suspect, and not a fan of the 1+1 layouts. In contrast to being a fan of the studio layouts and the studio units in this building. As a pro, in the con, I'm not a fan of the 1+1s. The building has had major issues with fire alarms and obviously also with elevator outages. Now, I've actually never experienced long elevator wait times when I've visited the building, but doing the research for this video, talking to people who live in the building, one thing that comes up often is the constant elevator outages and the long elevator wait times. It also has very poor parking design. That's one of the main complaints I've noticed and I've seen. The parking is very much so a pain in the butt. And then lastly, I've taken a look at the status of certificate for this building when I was considering it for some of my clients who were interested. There's going to be actually increases, if I recall correctly, upwards of 8 to 10% in the maintenance fee, which is a lot. Do not want to see the maintenance fee to go up 10% annually for the next couple of years. What you want to see in a healthy building is around 2 to 4%, maybe tops 5 to 6%. Here, when we were looking at this building status of certificate stated that in the future years, they're actually planning on increasing it by 10% in the next couple of years. Now, I really want to mention, consult a real estate lawyer with regards to this matter. I'm just speaking from what I have seen. Maybe since I've last reviewed the status of certificate, this has changed. It is as of, I would probably have to say, beginning of 2023. So overall, I would probably have to give this building a C+, I would say. It's really good for investors. It's not so good for end users. You can do much worse in downtown. You can definitely do much worse, but the fact of the matter is you can also do much better. I used to dislike it a lot more than I do now. It has grown on me. It has some redeeming qualities, but I would not rank it in the highest of tiers. This is Sam from Saberi Real Estate and Remax Realtor on Realty Inc. Contact information in the description box. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video informative, please subscribe, follow, and see you next time.